What's up everyone, Lance Hedrick here, and today we're going to take a look at the decent espresso machine in 2023. 2 years ago, I first purchased the decent espresso machine. I had been wanting it for years at that point. In fact, when they first announced it back in like 2016 or so, that it was gonna be coming out for $1,000, I really wanted one then, but I was on a really low barista budget, was working 3 jobs at the time, and just did not have a chance in this world or the next to afford $1,000. Fast forward a few years, and I got one of these in 2021, about mid-year that year, and I made a video on it, which I'll link right here. It's been an amazing paradigmatic shifting innovation that the coffee world has benefited from. We have a lot more machines coming out nowadays, as I predicted in that earlier video, that incorporates similar technology. You have the machine like the Meticulous, which is one of the highest funded ever Kickstarters for a food product, which is essentially a robotic lever machine that has similar functions as this does. You have the Cutesy, which takes essentially an espresso machine from AliExpress, about a $200 espresso machine, and it puts a tablet on it with all these types of controls. You also have the Maro that's coming out, which is, I believe, a German-based company, and they are coming out with something similar to this. You also have things like the Unica Pro, which is another robotic lever that has all these controls back from 2017 or 2018. You also have something like the Synesso ES1 that is coming out that has a lot of these different controls. On top of that, pre-existing companies are slowly adding more and more of these variables onto their machines as they see a demand for it, not only in the home market, but slowly in some of the more serious cafes. Now, you also have people in the home sector, unsurprisingly, that are implementing this type of control to their existing machines with their Rancilios and Gaggia Classic Pros, and it's called the Arduino project. You have 0bit up in the UK who came up with this, how to make an Arduino powered machine, and now they've gone through multiple iterations, and I actually have all the supplies needed to do it. I just got to carve out the time to do it, but it's essentially a decent espresso machine but on a Gaggia Classic Pro with all homemade appliances and firmware and software. So the question is this still worth it in 2023? Are they still the pioneers of this revolutionary style of modern espresso? Or have they been eclipsed? Is this kind of thrown in the past? Have they stopped innovating? That's what we're gonna get to in this video today. It's gonna be a revamped review of this product in light of everything else that has been coming out in 2023. Now recently, I actually had the opportunity to swap in my 2021 version for their updated model, which this one has just a couple of different things. One of the most, in my opinion, I mean, it's a very small cosmetic thing, but one of my favorite things about this new model is the tablet just slides on out, like so. They actually have a little clip type system that's right under here with a slot, so you can just pop this in, slide it in, and then if someone's over, you can pull it off, let them see it. Whoops, started that. You can kind of let them watch it. You can put it on top, on the table, whatever. If it's too bulky for it to be sitting out, you don't like the look, you can store the tablet somewhere, and it's a much more sleek looking machine. Before, you had 3 screws that you had to put in, and it was kind of awkward and just wasn't good times. So that's a small thing that they did that I appreciate. Now, of course, when it comes to aesthetics, it's all up to the user. You know, the beauty is in the eye. Nice. Oh, did it actually start charging? I don't think it looks very offensive. I know a lot of people despise the look. A lot of people absolutely love the look. It has a pretty small footprint, so that's kind of nice. It's a little long front to back, but for the most part, it's a good size. Mine is the XL, so it's a little bigger than the Pro, which is kind of the base model. The XL is kind of more commercial capable. But in the end, that's all up to you. If you think this is too much, you know, you probably also don't like Teslas, which is absolutely fine. And it's understandable. Some people just want manual espresso. They want to push a button or pull a lever. Speaking of levers, Standart Magazine, they took pictures of me with my levers, and they did a whole daggum calendar just for you. I highly recommend you get it. I've got a code just below that will give you a discount. But not only, they also have an article that I wrote called Aquile and the home espresso. So by using my code standartmag.com/Lance, just Lance, you can get the magazine and a free sample of coffee just by paying the shipping, which is $9 worldwide. And if you use my link, it tracks to me, and the better it does, the world is a happier place. I'm not sure which issue you get, if it's this one or the one before. Either way, you're gonna get inundated with Lance, all right? We got it, good. Let's get on with the decent. Now, it should be noted that you can take the tablet away, and whatever the most recent preloaded program is what's going to be running when you hit go. So you can just run shots with the group head itself. I know that a member of the Decent community, Euan Lake, actually created a paddle that he put on this so that he didn't even have to use the tablet at all, and he just used a paddle. He also is the one who made this grate to hold my scale, and he was the first one to kind of originally make these back panels that were not brushed stainless steel. So he's a really cool contributor to the group, and I'll put a link to him in the caption below. This is obviously a highly electronic piece with just full control over everything. Now, what's really unique about this is even after all this time being in the market, some years now, it is still the only machine I can think of that has full and complete control over water temperature during extraction. Yes, you have machines that have great thermal stability, but what this is offering that no other machine, to my knowledge, offers is dynamic thermal control, which means that you're able to say, I want the shot to start at 88 degrees, I want it to rise up to 93, then I want it to shoot down to like 70. The reason it can do this, whereas other machines cannot, is because there's an inlet pipe right before the group head that mixes cool water with hot water, so you can actually stabilize the temperature with all the different PID and all the different controllers inside with the thermoprobes and the temperature sensors. You can mix the water to get the temperature you're wanting. Now, other machines have some dynamic control, but you're really at the mercy of how hot the system is because it's hot water coming out. So there's no mixing of cool with hot water. You might be able to heat the water up during it because you're increasing the heating element's power, but as far as rapid drops, all you can really do in other machines is turning the boiler off and letting it go down just naturally. This, however, has a cool feeding pipe that allows for this dynamic temperature control, which is a huge thing, in my opinion, something that causes a lot of difference in your extractions. Now, of course, there are other machines with flow control, but there are not very many. There are machines with pressure control, but whenever you're talking about flow control, you're actually decoupling that relationship between resistance, which is the grind size, and input flow. So you're actually taking pressure and you're breaking it down into two constituent pieces where you're controlling grind size and you're controlling the flow rate, which means the pressure is just whatever those two together is creating. So when you have pressure, you don't really get to control the flow. You can manipulate it with a set grind size. You can change the pressure until you have a flow you think you want. The relationship is a little murky there. It's a little bit harder. When you're controlling just the flow rate, you have a little bit more control over the whole process. Now I have a whole video talking about the relationship between pressure and flow that you can watch if that's confusing. Anyway, we're going to continue and we're going to move on. I know the Meticulous is coming out with software that's able to do this. I think the Mara will be able to do this as well, and probably the Unica can, and I know the Espresso to an extent can, but nothing so far, even in the beta tested version of the Meticulous I have, nothing so far has quite the control that this does, where you can set up as many steps as you want in a shot of espresso. You can be like, step 1, temperature is 96 degrees, and I want it to run for 13 seconds at 6 bar, and then I want it to decline. I want it to have an easy decline for step 2. Step 2, I want it to have a flow rate of 4 milliliters a second, and I want it to move to the next step if the pressure goes too low. So let's say the pressure dips down to 1 bar of pressure, then we want it to move to step 3. You have all of these different controllable variables where you can force the machine to continue moving on step by step to what you have programmed. Now, actually, someone like Dr. Jonathan Gagne, he actually figured out a way to use this multi-step program to create adaptive profiles, literally meaning you put the coffee in and the machine will adapt to your grind size. Now, it's not a perfectly dialed in shot, but it's not a wasted shot. It will be a pretty good shot because the machine is adapting to the grind size and to the puck resistance. So there's a lot of cool things you can do with all of that control. But of course, the elephant in the room. It's all controlled by this tablet, and there can be finicky software updates. I've had some issues where I had to replace the Bluetooth chip in my machine because for some reason it stopped working one day. You have to reboot the machine often. There are software updates that you need to remember to do at night so you don't start it on accident in the morning when you're trying to pull a shot, because sometimes it takes an hour. The vibratory pump in this is super, super loud. You can kind of understand what's going on in the shot based off your profile and the sound that it's making when you're 50 meters away. There have been some issues throughout the past with too much headspace on the Decent. They're trying to lessen it with fillers and different things. You also had issues in the past, which they are now correcting, with the water dispersion coming out of the screen. So there's been a huge draw recently in these fancy baskets, these, originally $200 baskets that are now, $60, $70, $80, $90, where you have wider hole spread on the bottom. And this was to mitigate the under extraction that typically occurs on the edges. People for so long saw donut shots and thought, oh, the edge is over extracted. And they've been wrong this whole time. The edge was never really over extracting. There wasn't enough escape room for the coffee coming out of the edges because the top of the puck is 58 millimeters. The bottom exit was about 47 millimeters. So you have these new baskets that expand the edges back out to like 57 millimeters. And this was to help increase edge extraction. They took another route with this, and they had someone named Ben who was going through and looking at the dispersion of water going into the screen itself to see if maybe a more even dispersion of water over the puck itself would increase extraction yield across the full surface area of the puck. And what happened is it did increase it. It improved it. So now they have a new dispersion plate that you can get in this that improves the capability of the water coming out, and it is made out of a Teflon. Now, of course, the stock still is this brass piece. And this is the older design that is a little bit less than ideal when it comes to those edge extractions. Now, I have one of my Patreon members and a great, an awesome contributor to the coffee world, Rohan, Pocket Coffee Science. He's actually currently finishing up some testing for me on whether, like, how much the distribution of the water over the puck affects extraction on the edges by doing a similar experiment to Stefan Ribes, who years ago showed that the edges, even in donut shots, were under extracted by using a cookie cutter, using an oven, and measuring the remaining extraction left in that coffee. And he was able to surmise how much extraction was taking place in the center versus the outside. But anyway, that's getting too much. I'm digressing, but keep an eye out because soon Rohan will be done with that experiment and I'll be able to present some of those findings along with some other things. I have the Teflon dispersion block in here, which is much better, and I've seen a definite improvement in my shots. You need to have Wi-Fi connectivity in order to get the updates and things like that. Whenever I'm running, multiple tests, pulling multiple shots like I did for my fancy basket video, and I'm sitting and pulling literally hundreds of shots in a row, boom, 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 boom. I need something that is super, super consistent. I started with this because I could program everything and I could just hit it and go, and there's gravimetric, it stops on the exact gram, everything. It can connect Bluetooth to a scale, so it's great. I started pulling shots, but I was noticing even on the same grind size, my shots were wildly varying. Let's say I had 18 in, 36 out, and I was trying to do it in 20 seconds. I'm just making that up. One shot would be in 20 seconds, the next would be in 26, the next would be in 15, the next would be in 16, the next would be in 23. It was wild, the variation. Of course, you would think, well, that maybe your puck preparation was askew. Maybe every time it was different. Been doing WDT for a long time, and I'm pretty consistent with it, to be honest with you. I was getting very frustrated because I had to throw out so many shots because of the wild variations. So then I pulled out my La Marzocco Linea Micra, which is just a simple, every single time, it's a 9-bar shot. It ramps up to like 11 bar and it stabilizes at 9 for the duration of the shot. I pulled that out. I did the same thing. I started recording shots, and there was only like 1 to 2 second fluctuations, which that is more understandable for puck preparation. If my puck prep was truly that awful, there would be the same insane fluctuations on the Micra. But what I started to think was initially I was doing a slow fill rate, or not a slow fill rate, but a kind of a pre-infusion phase, a saturation phase, prior to hitting 9 bar. I thought maybe the water's just coming out at different rates because of that longer kind of pre-infusion. So I took that away and went straight to 9 bar, and even still there were inconsistencies from shot to shot. Now, I don't think that the inconsistencies are big enough for a home user that's pulling shots, back to back to back. I don't think it's going to be a big deal. For someone who is doing a lot of data acquisition, it was pretty annoying for me to have to deal with. I did reach out to, I believe it was John Buckman of Decent, and he wasn't sure what the issue was. He did ask me to make sure I calibrate my machine, which I then went and did, but the issue kind of persisted. I've not tested with this newer machine, but I think it's pretty much the same, or similar software. I sent mine in maybe 3 or 4 months ago. Whenever you go really hot on your temperature, or if you do a really low flow rate coming out of the group head, there seems to be some flow instability due to the heating up. It seems that when it goes really slow, it's heating up maybe a little too much, and kind of steam comes out, affecting the flow rate. And so that has been noticed not only by me, by other users in the forums. That's been something a lot of people have talked about, is kind of instability in the flow when you're either at a really hot temperature or if you are doing a really low flow, which is not surprising. If you shunt flow on a machine like a thermoblock or something, it's going to just want to heat up because the flow needs to be constantly moving through it. It's a similar thing here. This has a 2-meter coil inside that flash heats the water essentially. So if it starts to move really slowly after moving quickly with that heating process, it could do that if there's not a sophisticated way to respond to it with a mixing of cool water as it's moving slowly enough. Have been a lot of gripes that I've read. I even know someone who made a whole PowerPoint about their being upset with this machine in its entirety, and a lot of it was that they weren't really listening to the people with the machines. Now I'm not saying it. I just want you to be aware, the people that are watching it, because it is a fair thing. I've seen it enough times that I felt it warranted kind of bringing up. I have a good relationship with John. I actually received a 20% discount on my machine 2 years ago, and I'm very thankful for that. And it's because he knew that I was going to be using it in order to try to push forward some of this thinking in espresso. And I've relied on this machine a lot over the past few years. And even with the new players in the game, it's still kind of my go-to when I'm doing or when I'm trying to figure out new profiles or things like that. You also have probably the most active forum online when it comes to any specific machine. There's obviously great forums for like Weber Workshops owners, Cafetech owners, La Marzocco owners, Breville Dual Boiler owners, but there is a robust community in like 3 different places for Decent. One that Decent has made up themselves on Basecamp. You have someone has created a Discord for Decent, and then there's an app someone that actually created for Decent users, all of which are constantly buzzing with people finding out new discoveries or trying out new recipes. And what's nice is you can download your recipe and share it with other people. They can put it on their tablet and recreate whatever you've been messing around with. If you find someone with the same coffee, just shoot them your profile. They can replicate it, which is really cool. And I think more and more machines will be using this feature. I think it's just kind of, they were the kind of starters to it. They opened it up to a lot of these users who are really curious about more control over coffee. And over time, more people have been getting into it, and more people are wanting that control and wanting to share their results. So it's a really cool community that you're able to go and kind of follow along with some of the most compelling new research, I guess, amateur research in espresso extraction. Now, the only group I think that kind of rivals that is Espresso Aficionado Discord, which has a lot of decent users in there, but it also has people with the Gajuino and other machines where you can control, and they're sharing their flow profiles and their pressure profiles using things like the Smart Espresso Profiler app, or just simply giving you their water debit and their goal pressure, things like that. So, if you don't own a Decent, you can't really get into the Decent forums, but Espresso Aficionado Discord, if you're curious about all this, it's open and free for all. It has a thermoprobe literally millimeters above the puck. When you take off the screen, you actually see a hole for the probe to go through. It gets right there, so you're getting some of the most accurate readings of puck temperatures that you can get. They're even working on that further because they found that something was skewing the reading, and they're trying to fix that. They are constantly trying to fix a lot of these things. I'm excited about the steps they're taking forward. I'm curious to see what this new machine is all about. But until then, let's finish this by pulling some shots and listening to it and seeing how this all works. So we're going to be pulling kind of the default shot where it just kind of ramps up, and you'll see on the screen what's going to happen is the flow rate comes out at 4 milliliters a second, and the pressure is going to react accordingly based off the resistance of the puck in relation to the flow rate. So as we hit with 4 milliliters a second, you see that the pressure slowly raises. There we go. It's going to sit right there, and now it's up to 9 bar. So we had that slow ramp up, and then we shot up to 9 bar, and it's going to sit there until our pre-programmed weight, which I'm not going to lie, I don't remember what I set it to. But because I have the Bluetooth scale set up to it, it's going to stop automatically. So we're at 32 grams. I think I put it to 46 maybe. I don't remember though. We'll see where it stops. Yep, I put it to 46. It stopped at 46.2 grams. So there we go. We have our shot. Now there was some spraying. This is a super lightly roasted washed Kenya coffee from Manhattan, like incredibly light. So I pulled a little bit bigger of a shot, but that's the default profile. Now, of course, you can go in, even on this, you can go in and hit settings. You can go to, so here are the presets. You click default, I'm on default 2. Now, as you can see, I can take my finger and drag the pre-infusion bar here, and you can make it all the way up to like a minute or so of pre-infusion. Whoops, come on, there we go. So it's at 52 seconds. You see on the graph, it shows the pre-infusion to there. Now, of course, the pre-infusion, you can limit it right here. The reason it shows it's at 4 bar on the platform, we know it would go higher than that if there wasn't a limiter. You can limit the amount of pressure with this bar. So now I have the pre-infusion up to 12 bar, or I can put it to 0.6 bar. So what that means is it's gonna come out at 4 milliliters a second until it detects 0.6 bar. And then it's gonna try to change the flow rate to maintain 0.6 bar, and it'll stay there for 52 seconds or however long you've got it going. So this is a simple setup for it. So we'll put it back to like, I don't know, 3.5 bar. Then we have a rise and hold section. So that's the rising to get from the pre-infusion pressure of 3.5 bar up to the hold section, which is around 8.6 bar. Now it's 8.4, 8.5, 12 bar, whatever you want it at. So the rise and hold, you can make it rise and hold for 58 seconds, for 28 seconds, whatever you want to hold it at. But I want it to just rise. I want it to rise up just and hold for like, I don't know, like 4 seconds is fine. So it's going to rise up and hold it for like 4 seconds. And then we're going to put it back down to like 9 bar, 8.9 bar. And then you'll have the actual infusion going. And what this is going at is it's just going to slowly go down to 6 bar. We have a ramp down, a decline to 6 bar. So on this, you can change it to, a ramp down to 3 bar, 2 bar, whatever. You can make it a 15-second ramp down. I like to just put it at a minute and have the stop at weight. For instance, if you have a stop at weight at 46.4, but you have your time at 15 seconds and it's only at 28 grams in 15 seconds, it'll stop at whatever comes first. So I don't care as much about time as I do about the ratio. It's more important to me. So I usually just yeet that out to a minute. Now, of course, you can always come and make your own. You hit the plus button and you set up what kind of preset do you want. Do you want a pressure first preset? Do you want a flow first preset? So what we just looked at was a pressure first preset. So as you can see, that's what it looks like. But if we want a flow first, it looks like this. And what we're going to do is where the bar was last time for pressure, it's now for flow. So we say we want it limited to 5.9 milliliters a second, but we can say what pressure we're wanting that at as well. So it's flow first as opposed to pressure first. So you can do either one of those. Now another option is advanced. This is where it gets really, really difficult to kind of follow. This is where you can add a lot of steps. So up here, you have pre-infusion boost, pre-infusion, hold, decline, but you can see here and add steps all day. So it's just going to copy whatever step was before when you hit the plus. Then you just go in and you can rename it by clicking here and changing the name to Milky, like Silky Milky. And then we just, boom. So we can go to Milky. Then on this step, this one step, we can choose the temperature. I want this step at 73.5. The sensor is coffee. The flow, I want the flow to be 4.8. Pressure limit, I don't need a pressure limit. If I wanted a pressure limit, I could just turn it up to, pressure limit's 0.6 bar. The transition, I want it smooth or do I want it fast? I'm gonna do smooth. We can do a maximum amount of water. So you can do 2 seconds or you can do it by volume, 15 milliliters, so you can do it by weight. You can do a little bit of each, and whichever one it reaches first, it'll move on. Then you can have a move on if. So this means if you're doing all this and the pressure hits 1.6 bars where it's at, but you can say the pressure hits 5.8 bar, I want it to move to the next step. If the pressure hits, 1.8 bar, move on. Or you can say move on if the pressure is under a certain amount. So if you're doing a profile where the puck is eroding quickly, you can move on if the puck hits 3 bar, and then maybe you go to a softer flow or something. You can do move on if flow is over, move on if flow is under. So you have all of this control for every step. So it's a ton of control is all I'm trying to get to. Now I know a lot of you are sitting there anxious. Is Lance going to drink that espresso? Of course I'm going to drink this espresso. It's a washed Kenya coffee. What are you smoking? Come on. True to your heart, you must be true to your heart. Sorry, this was so good it made me want to sing. You have, like I said, all this control, but of course you can just go to presets, and you can, if you want to take presets off because it's so annoying to look at, you can sit there and delete whatever you want and it'll still be saved on here. So I can say, I want to do a Londinium style shot. That kind of replicates the Londinium lever machine. I want to do a shot that is, the TurboTurbo, the Extractamundo dos. This is something that Joe D, a decent user, has kind of created. It's a very popular shot amongst decent users, very fast. You can do a coarser grind size, which really allows for a more even extraction. Gets you a high extraction, really high clarity, flavor separation, smaller body, thinner body, but it's a very popular shot. So once you're in these groups, you can kind of play around with new ideas on how to extract. You can play around with like a Slayer style shot. You can replicate old type of spring levers. You can do, a linear type of shot where it goes up to 11 and flats out at 9. So you have really control over everything, but again, you don't have to use it all. You can just set it and forget it. You can put it on a profile, just hit the button, hit the button, hit the button, you'll be good to go. You can also, what's cool is they have thought of ideas of, they have essentially a connection you can buy that you can put tea in, and it does a steep and release based off of the kind of the pressure going over the tea, kind of like Gung Fu Cha. You can do a steep and release with the machine itself. They also have a pour over attachment. Scott Rayo has been working on a big attachment like this for Filter 3.0, which right now can really only be done with this and a few other machines that have flow control. In the end, is this worth what it was a few years ago? I think it is. At its price point, I still think it is worth it. Now, of course, the Meticulous is going to be a really nice priced option, but there you obviously don't have the temperature profiling. Now, again, I know they're working on maybe a gear pump or a rotary pump, I can't remember, to so for some future iterations or future options, but right now you are reliant on this Vibe pump, which I'm a little skeptical of, especially with the noise. But there, some of the issues that I've seen in this machine, I'm curious. I'm skeptical if it's the vibratory pump itself, but who actually knows? They're usually pretty reliable. Anyway, I think that's enough talking from me. I like the machine. At the price point, it's hard to find something that beats it. You just have to be kind of okay with the software updates, with the noise, with the control, and maybe being intimidated with this. But again, you can always just remove it, just pull it right on off, set it to the side, and you have a more normal looking machine. You also don't need to have this mirror if you think that looks ugly. Ugo hates it, so I like it though, because I like to look at the shots underneath. Anyway, I think that's about it. I hope that you enjoyed the video today, and brew something tasty. Cheers.